There are three main phases to a relationship with an avoidant. And these phases can vary in time, and they can vary in intensity, and it can vary depending on whether you're dealing with a pure dismissive avoidant or if you're dealing with a fearful avoidant. Now let's get into these three phases. The first phase, it's the infatuation phase. This is the shared fantasy. It's not a real relationship yet, it's early dating. The avoidant is riding that dopamine rush. Dopamine and oxytocin, the feel-good hormones that go off in the brain, are riding high in the avoidant. They're feeling good. Their fears have not been triggered yet. They think they finally got it right. They finally found the right person because they don't feel afraid, and they're letting all these bottled up emotions that they suppressed throughout their entire lives, they're letting these emotions flow right onto their partner. They're telling their partner things like, nobody has ever made them feel this way before. The avoidant, they're feeling good, and they are love bombing. Now, not all of them love bomb, but they are more prone to it than other attachment styles. And when you're on the receiving end, you think you finally met your twin flame. You think that you finally met your person. Now, this stage can go on for a few months or even a year or more, and it depends on the person, and it depends on whether you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant. Next comes the fault-finding phase. Something has triggered the avoidant's fears. They have a very specific set of fears. Fears of rejection, fears of engulfment. The fear of engulfment is the fear of losing themselves, losing their independence in a relationship to somebody who's ultimately going to abandon and reject them. And those tie into the main fear, which is the fear of abandonment. Many avoidants, especially dismissive avoidants, are not even aware that they have this fear. It lies in their subconscious. And because they generally don't self-reflect, they don't reflect on their feelings and their fears, they are often unaware of why they get triggered and feel the need to run away. But it actually goes back to early childhood, when this person was emotionally neglected by their parents or caretakers. Their feelings were outright rejected. So this is a person that learned if you rely on anybody for your emotional needs, they're going to abandon you, they're going to reject you, disappoint you. They also learned that they can only rely on themselves. They learned to be fiercely independent. And because their feelings were rejected as a child, they are very sensitive to rejection as an adult. So now, their fears have been triggered. However, rather than self-reflecting on the fears, because that would be too painful, they look for faults in their partner. They look for something externally that they can pin their fears on, that they have the urge to run and end the relationship. But they don't want to take accountability for that, because accountability will be confirming their own inner defectiveness. And they feel defective because they weren't given love as a kid. They think there must be something wrong with them. So it's much easier to blame their feelings, blame their fears on their partner. So they start looking for any little inconsistency, any faults, any incompatibilities in their partner. Because when they find it, no matter how small it is, it's the justification they need to feel this way and to run away. And then comes the breakup stage, the discard. They found the fault in their partner that they needed to justify their fears, and they can abruptly end the relationship. Or they might slow fade out, just pulling back, pulling back, pulling back, pulling back, not answering texts in a very timely manner, not being loving and mushy anymore. And they can do this with the hopes that their partner is going to be the one to end the relationship. That way they don't have to look like the bad guy. Or they just abruptly discard. They shut down, they deactivate, they take their feelings for their partner, they suppress them, they bury them, and they run for the hills. And it can be blindsiding. The slow fade can be blindsiding too, because in either scenario, there is little to no explanation given as to why the relationship is ending. It is vague excuses. I can't give you what you need. I'm just not ready for a relationship right now. I just don't think you're the one. The spark is gone. Very vague stuff. And this comes from a person that doesn't self-reflect on their feelings. When their fears are triggered, they take all their emotions and bury them and refuse to reflect on them. So it's very difficult to articulate your feelings when you refuse to reflect on them or think about it. Now, if you're dealing with a fearful avoidant, you might get a very specific excuse as to why they're ending the relationship. It might be something that they don't like that you're doing, or a need of theirs that's not being met. The problem is they never told you about it prior because they're afraid of rejection, and they think that their partner should just know what they're feeling and what they need. It's still blindsiding, and they still found the fault that they needed to run from the relationship because their fears are triggered and they don't feel safe with a partner that is consistent, loving, and emotionally available. This triggers their fears. The avoidant has a low self-esteem. They feel like they're not good enough for a loving partner, and it's a matter of time before the loving partner figures out that they are in fact too good for the avoidant, and they reject and abandon the avoidant. So it's safer to be the one doing the abandoning than to risk being abandoned themselves. When they are doing the discard, the breakup, they are only thinking of themselves. They're not thinking of the pain and the devastation that they're causing their partner. That's because they're so insecure, they're only able to really think of their own perceived wants, needs, and fears and feelings in the moment. They're not trying to hurt their partner, but they're not exactly going out of their way to not hurt their partner either. And because they've taken all these feelings and they've suppressed them and buried them, they also bury their access to empathy. And the partner that they're discarding can be in absolute tears, can be so hurt, and the avoidant can be stone cold. Or maybe they show little emotion, but there's not much words behind it. And there's still just the vague excuses. There's no conversation that's had. It's a unilateral breakup. It's blindsiding, it's absolutely devastating, and it's absolutely traumatic. Now, after the breakup stage, there is sometimes a fourth phase, and I'll get into that. The fourth phase is the breadcrumbing phase, or maybe even the rekindling phase. When their partner that's been discarded goes into no contact, doesn't reach out, does not chase, does not plead, doesn't beg, just goes quiet. The avoidant, well, first, they feel a sense of relief because they're no longer being pressured to be emotionally available. They're not being pressured to be vulnerable for this person anymore. They're not being pressured to give anything of themselves, so they feel relief. But after some time goes by, they become quite curious as to why they're not being chased. And eventually that curiosity leads to the feeling of loss. Now they've unburied their feelings because it feels safe, and they're allowing themselves to miss the partner and miss the benefits of that partner. This is often when the avoidant will start to send out little feelers, likes on social media, watching stories, maybe even a "hey, how you doing" text. This is usually, in most cases, for the purposes of confirming that their ex still wants them and is still an available option for them. And if the ex takes the bait, it validates the avoidant, and they feel better knowing they still have their ex as an available option. In some cases, they do regret the breakup enough to the point where they want to rekindle it. And that can be great if this person actually is committed to doing change. Are they going to see therapy? Are they committed to a change in behavior? Have they exhibited self-awareness? If so, they can make meaningful change. If they just regret it and want to come back and sweep it under the rug like nothing happened, odds are it's going to happen again, because those same unhealed wounds, those same triggers, those same fears still exist and will inevitably get triggered again in the second go round or third or fourth of the same relationship. Now, the avoidant can change and end this cycle when they become self-aware and commit to doing the work to heal, which should include therapy with a licensed psychotherapist. But if you are a loving, consistent partner and the avoidant ended the relationship without any explanation, don't blame yourself. That's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them, it's a reflection of their unhealed attachment wounds. It's also a reflection of their character. Now, there's always culpability to be had on the other side, and most commonly, the partner of the avoidant didn't hold and enforce firm boundaries, because those boundaries likely would have shortened the duration of this unhealthy relationship and saved the partner emotional time and energy that they invested into a person that wasn't reciprocating it. That said, you're never responsible for the avoidant's unhealthy behavior. That's their choices. They are a fully grown adult and responsible for their own decisions.